Hi everyone, today is such a big day for me because I get to speak with author Jennifer Robson about this book right here, The Gown. Guys, this book is so good. I actually got the Kindle and the audio, and I ended up listening to the whole thing because it was so beautifully done. I highly suggest the audio. And I don't do that very often. I don't usually say, you should listen to the audio instead of reading it. I am usually a reader, but I got both because I was really busy and then I didn't want to stop listening. And I can't wait to tell her. It was like listening to a play. It was so amazing, so beautiful. Jennifer, I can't wait to talk to you. I've been wanting to talk to Jennifer since Fall of Poppies, which was two or three. I don't know. It was a while ago. Okay, I'll have to ask her when, but it was a while ago, and today I get to do it. So everybody, here is Jennifer. Hi everyone, I am so excited because I am speaking with author Jennifer Robson, and we are talking about her brand new book, just came out at the end of December, called The Gown, and she has a copy of it. She's going to show us this beautiful
Yeah,
cover
they're
because,
gorgeous, gorgeous
oh my
cover.
God, I love that. Oh my gosh, Jennifer, I saved this last part for this morning because I
Yeah,
just wanted to finish it. And
yeah,
I don't usually say this. I bought the Kindle and the audiobook.
yeah,
Okay. And I ended up listening to the audio almost the whole time. It was
yeah.
so much fun. And I
It was
wanted to
very
look to
well done.
see who did it, but the characters, like she had a
Yeah.
different voice for every I felt
hmm
like I was listening to a play.
She was, and she nailed their accents.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
really diverse accents that she did really well. I was very pleased with how it turned out. Yeah.
Oh, I was telling everybody in the intro, I'm like, I don't usually say listen to a book. I listen to books when I am busy, and that's why
hmm
I'll have them for, to fill in. But this one was like a whole other level of a book,
Yeah.
an audio
Yeah.
book. And
Yeah.
not only did she do Miriam as young, and then she
Yeah.
aged her.
And her voice is a little bit deeper, a little bit
Oh my
huskier. I thought it was
gosh.
really well done. Yeah.
Yeah, so five
Yeah.
stars to her, whoever she is out there.
Yeah, Marisa Kalin is her name, I
Oh,
think. And I may be mispronouncing her last name, but she was excellent.
oh, she was
Yeah.
so good. So when I got done with it, I was just like, this is like my perfect book. Because I love
Mm.
historical fiction. I love English historical fiction. And then World
Yeah.
War II. And then like just add it all up and Queen Elizabeth. And it's the perfect book. Okay.
Yay.
But I have been trying to talk to you since Fall of Poppies. Okay.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
been trying to connect to you since then.
Oh
So I
gosh.
was like so excited when I realized we
Yeah.
were finally going to get to talk because
Oh, wonderful. Yay, at last. Yeah.
I know, because I love that book so much, and all of your work. I mean, it's just it's amazing. And then to like for this one, I feel like this one just like culminates. Like this is just like
It was, yeah, it was. I mean, it took me a long time to write, longer than my books usually do. And I think that's because I had the three strands, the three characters woven together. Um, Up till now, my first book had two points of view, the two central characters.
mhm.
And then from then on, it's just been one narrative voice for each book, and then taking three and having to braid them together was a challenge. I think I pulled it off. I There were
You
moments
did.
I wasn't sure if I pulled it off, but
No, you did.
and it's each of these women spoke to me in really profound ways, and I know it always sounds a little woo woo when authors say, oh, they can hear people's voices, they can hear the characters talking to them, but these women I really did. And there are elements in each of them that are drawn from people I know, not wholesale, but just elements of character and even just mannerisms and so on. Um, but they are their own people. Each woman is unique and profoundly unique, and it's as if these voices kind of lifted out of the ether and
Mm.
tapped me on the shoulder and said, "I have a story to tell." And kind of clarifying that story and boiling it down to its essentials so that the three strands would fit into the one book was an undertaking at times, I have to say. But
Well, first of
I
all,
loved writing it.
oh my gosh. I mean, the research you must have done about her dress
Yeah,
and
yeah.
how it. So, was there anybody in there that was real? Were there any?
So one person is who I inserted with her permission. was the character Betty, who appears just glancingly in a few scenes throughout the Hartnell chapters, or the chapter set in the workroom. And then on the day of the royal wedding, she and Miriam are at the palace together to help with, any last minute rips or tears. If somebody puts her heel through her petticoat on the way out the door, they're there to fix issues. And so in an earlier draft, I just put one of the other women from the workrooms in that place. And then I kept in touch with Betty after I'd interviewed her. And I should add that this is the woman. It's explained in the back of the
Yeah.
book. This is the woman who was the last surviving seamstress to work on the gown. So she wasn't an embroiderer, but she worked in the next room, and her memories were just incredible. And she is the loveliest person. She's 91 now. She looks like she might be approaching 60 at the most. Just beautiful, beautiful lady inside and out. And so she'd given me so much, and I thought, well, it seemed only appropriate to pop her into the book. And so the woman called Betty Pierce is, in fact, that was her maiden name, is Betty Foster. And what I do explain in the end notes is that on the actual wedding day, Betty was at but not inside the palace. She stood outside the gates. There was a special area reserved for women who worked at Hartnell, and they were given little tickets to go and stand and watch the princess go by in her carriage. So that's where Betty actually was. But with her permission, I put her inside the palace so that she and Miriam could stand at the windows and look down the Mall and see the carriages processing towards Westminster Abbey. And I wanted her to have that bird's eye view.
Uh, well, I love when I'm reading a book and I've got two different time. Well, I always think about you, of course, when you're
Yeah,
doing two different timelines, three different characters. I
yeah,
mean, your notes must just be like, to make
yeah,
sure they all go. But when they collide in a way where you keep me guessing, like, how is
yeah,
this going to work out? How,
yeah,
we do know who they are and we know how they're related, but
yeah,
the crossing of paths. And
yeah,
I
yeah,
loved how you kept my anticipation. So I love that. It's like historical fiction, but I'm like, okay, so where's Heather? Okay, so how is Heather going to fit
yeah,
in here?
yeah.
Where is she going to, her
Well,
timeline?
and it's making sure that the connections ring true between people, and
Yes.
it's almost like these invisible lines that bind people together through the generations. And they're invisible until we notice them, if that makes any sense.
Yes.
And that's what, Heather had these connections her whole life. She just didn't realize it. And so that's why I think the moment of connection with Miriam towards the end of the book, the older Miriam, is very profound for her.
Oh,
So that she's opening a window to Heather's family's past that she had no idea really existed.
right.
And then telling and just making that connection with somebody who knew her grandmother at a time long before Heather's own birth, and a different version of her grandmother that she herself never knew. And I think that's the case with all of us. Like, our parents and grandparents lived lives that we have no notion of what they were getting up to before we came along. And so it's the idea that there's this past in our own families that dates before our earliest memories. Who are these people? I mean, in some ways they're strangers.
Right.
My parents, when they got married in the 1960s, are people that I will never know. And the same with my grandmother working as a reporter during World War II. I only knew her as grandma in her 60s and onward, but she was, she had this whole life, professional life, that only until I wrote Goodnight from London, which was inspired by her story, because Ruby, the character in that, is a reporter as well. Only when I wrote that book did I go back and start thinking seriously about Grandma's own life, and so it's this idea of connection with the people who are closest to us.
Yeah.
Um, we presume that we know so much about them, and then when we start asking questions, we realize we don't.
Yeah, when my dad died when I was young, and then my mom passed away in 2011, but I had her for 47 years of my
Yeah,
life, and I realized when she passed away, all her brothers and sisters were still alive, and I
yeah,
kept going to them and saying, who was this woman? My mom. Like,
Yeah.
she was my mom, and I didn't, there were
Yeah.
questions that I did not ask
Yeah.
her, you know?
Yeah. Well,
So,
and probably you've got a better shot at finding out the answers from those siblings than from your mom herself. Because people tend to be, especially a generation or so back, they tend to be very reticent. And that's the case, Miriam says at one point in the book when she's talking to Heather, she talks about, oh, you young people with your Twitter and your
yes,
Facebook and your whole lives are on display. But when I was young, it was very different, and people were very private. And I've seen this with my own, with my own parents and my parents-in-law, that stuff that I would not hesitate to talk about with my friends.
right,
I don't know if I'd necessarily broadcast it on social media. That I'm kind of in that mid range where I like
right,
social media. I'm on it, but I'm not bearing my soul to the degree that the 20 somethings are.
right.
But you go back a generation and people were extraordinarily reticent about their personal lives
Hmm.
and very, very private. And the idea of talking about something that was felt to be shameful or upsetting, it just people would just rather just push that away, and so doors would close and they would never be opened again.
Yeah.
And here I am coming along, wrenching the door open, trying to see what's on the other side.
Yeah, that's what I love, and I love that at
Mm.
the end when she says that to her, and I was like smiling because I'm like, right,
Yeah,
we are the generation where we're not telling everybody everything. Sometimes I
yeah,
see on Facebook things my kids write, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what are
yeah,
you
yeah.
writing?
Yeah, no,
Like,
I see, yeah, teenagers I know, and they're posting things that I just think, oh, honey, really? And
don't.
I'm pretty strict with my kids. I don't talk about my kids in the sense I don't feature them in any of my social media, more just because I feel that that's something they have to choose to engage in, and that's not a choice they can make at their age. Um, but then, they have Instagram accounts,
Yeah,
which I monitor, and that's as far as I've been able to let myself go. I just feel it's baby steps all the
yeah,
way with this new world. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, you've written, this is your fifth book,
yeah,
right? Outside of like Fall of Poppies and
yeah.
right. So you're promoting this one, just came out. So I know you probably have another one like in the
I do, and I'm still kind of it's still in the early stages. What happens is I'm the kind of person who I fuss with the research for months and months and months,
mm,
and work on an outline for months and months, and to the point where my editor and I are on the same page because I trust her implicitly. She's an amazing, amazing editor, and if she feels something will work, then I know it'll work. So we go back and forth, and I've been adjusting the outline based on some concerns she had, and so we're kind of at the stage where we're going to talk it over in the next week or two. And then with the research mostly done, it's just a case of my digging in and writing it. And funnily enough, even though I'm going to be touring for, I think, the last chunk of February and then the first half of March, I think, um, I actually find traveling is a pretty good time to be writing because I just fire up my laptop and I, no matter where I am, I can work. And there's a lot of waiting time that you
yeah,
get into when you're traveling that I could be sitting and reading a trashy magazine, or I could be working on I could be working on my next book. And so yeah, so it's and this one, the next book, it's still so up in the air, but the central characters this time are two sisters. One who experiences tremendous personal success, and is in the public eye,
mm,
and but we realize is desperately unhappy. And then the other one has kind of been shunted aside from the public eye and is on paper the person who's unsuccessful. He has a job that's not very prestigious, or how should I put it, acknowledged as being particularly glamorous. And but paradoxically, she's the sister that actually is pretty content with her life. And so they've been separated, and it's a story of how they find each other to again, and how they kind of fill the holes in each other's lives. That's what I'm wrestling with, and it's set against a backdrop of the London theater, and the kind of the early like the rather the late music hall scene in
mm,
London and England, more broadly speaking. Um, and also, but just that emergence of celebrity culture and this idea of these people's lives being offered up as kind of the glittering spectacles of
Right.
perfection, when in fact we know from anybody who's read anything about Hollywood or the film world in the 1940s and 50s knows that it was in some ways a pretty grim place. And particularly if you were a woman, if you were gay, if you were a person of color, it was tremendously, the inequalities were so ghastly, and what people were made to do, and how they were manipulated is pretty horrible. And so I'm getting into to that as well. It still sounds so nebulous, but it's there in my head, and
Yeah.
I have, yeah, I'll be able to share more in the coming months once I've kind of hammered it out. And there's a point at which my head is still with the gown, though, and it hasn't
Oh,
tipped over to this next new book. And that'll happen in the next few months once I've kind of talked myself out.
yeah.
And
Oh,
then I'll think, okay, now it's time to move on. But the
right.
characters linger with me. I mean, I've never dreamed of writing a sequel to a book in the sense that I would never go and um, you know, take Miriam and write another whole book about her, because I think I've told her story.
Yeah.
But there's still part of me that wants to go back and talk to her a little bit more. So yeah, never say never, but there's part of me that's very interested in the idea of of exploring what happens to characters that I've really loved over the years.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, and
Yeah.
she would be such a great character to go back. We know
Yeah.
some of
Yeah.
her backstory, but to like
Yeah.
explore that backstory.
Well, and there are other characters. The character of Vanessa, in my previous book, A Note from London, who's the matriarch of this the kind of lovey family of theatricals. She's someone that I think has quite an interesting story, and I wrestle with that sometimes. Should I tell her story in a book? And but at some point, with all the planning and fussing I do, there's a moment of clarity, and it's clear to me what the story is, and then I just sit down and write it. And the same thing happened with the gown. I had months and months and months of research and hitting brick walls again and again, where I just couldn't get the answers I needed to write the book. And I could have glossed it over, but I feel like my readers are smart people,
Mm,
and they would know if I took the easy way out. They would know if I glossed it over and you know employed wallpaper research as opposed to the real thing.
yeah.
So I kept digging, and finally it was meeting Betty that just it opened all those doors for me.
Um,
And as soon as I had that in place, I transcribed her interview. I had everything down. She filled in the missing gaps in the narrative for me, and then I just started writing, and it kind of just a straight through. I think it was about an 8-month process, um, and then handed it in on December 31st, 2017, actually. So it was 1 year exactly to the day it came
uh,
out. Handed in the first draft.
Oh, you are such an amazing writer. I love your writing.
Oh,
It was
thank
so
you.
much fun to read, and like I said, your research is so much fun. I love learning about this. I love and I made me go back and look at more pictures and
Yeah, yeah.
and
The kind of one of my dreams is when somebody writes to me and wants to know if something that they've read in the book is in fact true, and it because it feels true to them. I've had a few people email and want to know more about Miriam Dessin and her embroideries,
right.
and where can they see them? Where can they find out more about Miriam? And I have to write back and tell them she's actually a product of my imagination. I'm sorry, but these are the other artists and embroiderers who inspired me in terms of describing Miriam's work and so on. But is in fact a product of my imagination, and I feel badly I don't have pictures of the embroideries that she did to
Uh,
show them, but.
uh,
Uh, if I were more of an artist, I might attempt to draw something, but I think people can close their eyes and see the embroideries as I do.
yeah, and just to realize that that art form, that stuff can be made in a factory now. Like there
Yeah,
aren't women just out there. And
yeah,
I,
yeah,
I'm a crocheter, and I come from
yeah,
my grandmother was a seamstress. I come from a long line of like that kind of work. And
yeah,
To think that it's such a lost, like,
Yeah,
picturing
yeah,
them, like
yeah,
sitting there hours and hours making them
yeah,
perfect. And when you look at the picture, even on the cover of the book, to realize like how perfect they had to be,
yeah.
it's just
It is kind of, it's not a dying art form, but it's an increasingly rarefied one.
rare.
So you have, the embroidery atelier still in Paris, the smaller bespoke studios like Hand and Lock, where I went to learn how to do this embroidery. I mean, learn to get a sense of it.
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
an
right.
embroiderer. And in London, where you also see some beautiful, beautiful work still being done is in places like India and Pakistan,
Yeah,
where bridal finery quite often, the saris are beautifully,
yeah,
in India specifically, are beautifully, beautifully embroidered, and it's very, very high quality work. But again, it doesn't suffer, but the women who make it, of course, you know, I'm sure are paid very little for their labors, and are not, again, like Anne and Miriam, were never acknowledged for the artistry of their work, or rarely so. And
right.
but yeah, I have had a few readers write to me and show me in pictures of their embroidered wedding gowns,
Uh-huh.
that were produced, that
Fine.
came from workshops in Pakistan,
Oh,
or in, and they're just gorgeous. They're absolutely, and it's embroidery of a standard that would match Hartnell's, absolutely.
yeah, it's such a, I mean, I do crochet. I do get
Yeah,
paid to crochet sometimes. People want
yeah,
something, but it's a labor of love. There's no
yeah.
way to pay you hourly.
Yeah,
It's
yeah. You
ridiculous,
can't really measure that kind of work.
No.
I mean, I've once, when you look at people who sell their quilts at craft
Oh,
fairs,
yes.
thinking, even an incredibly expensive quilt still is, if you break it down to the
Penny.
number of hours that it
Ah,
took to make it, there's no way that you're getting anything that looks like a quote unquote a fair wage for it. You
no.
just aren't.
No, it's
Um,
pennies, pennies an hour,
yeah,
you know.
yeah,
But you do it because you love it, and they do it because
yeah,
they love it. But anyway,
yeah.
show everybody the cover one more time. I'm
Oh,
gonna have
here we
all
are.
of Jennifer's
Here we
links
are.
listed below, especially the Amazon one. That's gonna
Yeah,
take you right there. I love it. I'm so happy they
yeah.
picked that black and white picture for the
It's
cover.
so
It's
that was an 11th hour decision, in that we had a very similar cover, but a different photograph from a different angle. And it just did not work as well.
ah
And then one of the amazing salespeople at HarperCollins, or at Morrow in the States, she stayed up all night. Her name is Carla. Carla, I thank you for this. She stayed up all night, and she found this picture, and even I had not seen it before, which is
nope,
saying something, because I had
right.
looked. Oh, I lost so much of my vision on this, and looking through microfilm and so on, and yeah, and it just makes it. I just think it's so immediately recognizable as the princess and her husband. And but what you can also see is this magnificent train that was so beautifully.
Ah. And you know what
Um,
I love? Move it over just a little bit so that they can see it. I love that he's looking at her in
yeah,
the
yeah,
picture.
yeah,
You
and
know?
the way he's holding her hand, and
Oh, I
yeah,
know.
and so these pictures were taken from. There's a little, almost like a tiny little balcony just above the Great West Door at
Oh,
Westminster Abbey, and the same photographer took some very beautiful photographs of the princess going in, and she's standing with her father, and the bridesmaids are arranging her train and her veil, and the way they look standing around her, they look like almost like ballerinas, or swans even, they had beautiful kind of tulle stoles over their shoulders, and it's a gorgeous picture. But then we were worried people would think the book would be
be
about
out.
bridesmaids,
Right.
as opposed to being the gown, and this is very clearly the gown.
Oh
Yeah,
my gosh.
yeah,
Perfect.
yeah,
Thank you
yeah,
so much, Jennifer. It has been my
yeah.
pleasure to meet
Oh,
you and to
thank
get to talk
you.
to you. I love that book so much. I can't
Thank
wait.
you.
You know where to find me. I will be an early reader and we can talk. Okay.
Yes, yay, wonderful. Thank you so
Okay.
much
And
for inviting me.
I'm praying for your cat. Okay.
Thank you so much,
Yes.
Louise. Okay.
Have a
Thanks
great
a lot.
day. Thanks.
Okay, you too. Okay,
Bye. Oh
bye-bye.
my gosh. I am still like just so excited that I got to talk to her. She's awesome. She went into so much detail, and I could have listened to her talk about this book forever. Okay. It's so amazing. And, at the end, I said I was praying for a cat because I saw on Facebook that her cat is missing. So hopefully soon it will be found. But thank you so much, Jennifer. You made my day. And like I said, all her links are going to be listed below. Please hit like if you enjoyed watching us. I enjoyed talking to her. So thanks, everybody. Have a great day.